I knew it was time to end this whole thing and get out of the master control booth before anyone arrived to shut me down. If I hurried, I could switch off the live assist mode and put the system back into the fully automated broadcast mode. Our local television audience had seen enough for one night. As soon as I had the system up and running normally, I could get out of here and go get a drink. I needed a drink. I also knew that there was going to be hell to pay. Hell to pay when I got home, and hell to pay when the general manager and the FCC put it all together and came looking for me. I was already in hell, so it didn't matter to me anymore. As I said, I needed a drink. I drove to Frankie's on Roswell Road, a local sport bar hotspot, and ordered a beer. I sat there and watched the end of the Monday night football game while I had several more beers. There was quite a buzz going on at the bar, and I knew what it was all about. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough to know I had clearly achieved my goal. I had them talking. Thankfully, they didn't draw me into their conversations, and I drank in silence and all alone while I watched the Saints beat up on the poor Falcons. By the time 10:30 p.m. rolled around, I was not feeling much pain. The game was over and my team had lost. New Orleans 23, Atlanta 3. I think the Saints must have been fired up about playing their first game in their stadium since the hurricane, because they literally tore up the Falcons. Our station had carried the game in addition to ESPN carrying it because we were one of the participants. I asked the bartender if it was all right to leave my car in the parking lot and pick it up in the morning. He said it was the wise thing to do given the condition I was in. He called a cab for me since I lived only a short distance away in a nice residential section of Sandy Springs. Well, that is pretty much the end of the story, and I suppose I should start at the beginning so you know exactly what brought me to this place. My name is Richard Head, but my friends call me Dick. I am a broadcast engineer for WBDK, a local affiliate in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a graduate degree from MIT in electrical engineering and computer science, and I received a second degree in broadcast technologies. Needless to say, I am extremely qualified in my field and have had several very challenging positions. My career started in the industry 22 years ago, and I have worked at several television stations on the East Coast and have been here in Atlanta for the last 5 of those years. If you are interested in a description of me, is around 5 feet 5 inches tall, not an ounce over 135 pounds, with long blonde hair down to her shoulders. She is very pretty and has a figure that makes my mouth water and turns most people's heads. On top of all that, Sharon is one of the sweetest women I have ever met. I cannot think of one person who doesn't like her. She works as a secretary for our pastor, Reverend Bob Shelter, and has for the last 18 months. Well, back to the story. This all started last week Friday. I had a little extra time for lunch, and I thought it might be nice to drop in on Sharon and take her to lunch. I parked at the side entrance to the church offices since it was raining and I could get closer to the door. She wasn't in her office when I got there, but I walked in anyway. While I was standing there, I could hear her talking to Pastor Bob in his office. I can't wait for Monday night, baby. It is so great that Dick works the Monday night football games for the station. It gives us lots chances to get together. It has been so long since I felt that. I can hardly stand it. Have you reserved the room at the La Quinta Inn yet? She asked. Yes, it is all taken care of. I asked for the Whirlpool suite again. I can't wait for it either. It has been a long time. Come here, baby, and let me get a feel of it right now. I heard a slight rustling of clothes, and then I heard her moan. Right then you could have knocked me over with a feather. Well, I was in shock, on the verge of throwing up, and my rage was beginning to build, so I knew I better get the hell out of there before I did something really stupid. I didn't think I could take standing there listening to a second more. I wanted to rush in there and confront them, and maybe I should have just done that. But in the condition I was in right then, I was certain that I would have killed them both. I didn't like the prospects of what would happen to me after that, so I turned and left. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. I wanted to kill, but I just left. I was certain that neither of them saw me or knew that I had been there. They did have video cameras scanning both main entrances to the church, but I had slipped in the side door, so they never saw me come in. I slipped out the same way and drove away. I was so shaken up that I knew I would be useless for the rest of the day, so I called the station and let them know that I wasn't feeling well and was going to go home. I had to have time to think what I was going to do, and home was as good a place as any. Sharon would not be there until after 4 p.m., so I had lots of time to think this through. It was pretty clear that she was having an affair with Pastor Bob. Forget that. He would never be my pastor again. From now on in my mind, he was Bastard Bob. It kind of rhymes with Pastor Bob, and I like the ring of it. What I needed to find out was the total nature of their relationship, how long had the affair been going on, and why it had happened in the first place. I know that some people don't want to know those things because they really do not matter, but I am not one of those people. I wanted to know so desperately why this had happened in my marriage. The marriage I thought was so wonderful. Obviously, Sharon didn't think it was as wonderful as I did. Obviously, she wasn't the sweet person I thought she was. Well, I would find out everything I needed to know and deal with it. I was no wimp, and I would get to the bottom of this, and both of them would be dealt with accordingly. After I got home, I made myself a pot of coffee and went out to sit on the patio and think. The weather was pleasant, and I knew I could use the fresh air to help keep my head clear as I thought this through. I would figure it all out in time, and I needed to settle myself. I won't say that I didn't shed a few tears that afternoon, because I did. I know I don't own her or her body, but it devastated me to think that she would allow another man, or men, to have her when she had promised herself to me on our wedding day. Some might not take that promise too seriously, but I did, and I thought she did too. Something like that makes you question your whole value system and ask yourself that you have been a fool your whole life to believe in fidelity and love and all that goes with it. No matter what anyone says, the most damaging aspect of a cheating partner isn't that they had it with someone else. It is that you no longer can believe in them or in anything they say or do. You have no more trust in them. Throughout your whole marriage, you thought they had your back, but now you know that they don't, and it leaves you vulnerable and frightened. Oh yes, I might be 6 feet 3 inches tall and 190 pounds, but I felt vulnerable and frightened. And that further emphasizes what a cheating spouse can do to a person. It cuts you down at the knees like nothing else could. As I sat there fighting with my emotions, trying to remain calm and objective so I could work this through in my mind, I realized that there were things that I had questioned in the past and let go because of the trust one did have in Sharon. They were little things that meant nothing then, but now had piled up into a huge lump in the pit of my stomach as I put it all together. How could I be so stupid? Trust, that's how. I had trusted her. Today that trust was destroyed, and all those little clues congealed into a mass that I would have a hard time digesting. Facts. Facts is what I needed. I wanted to know why. I wanted to know how long and how often. I wanted to know where, and I needed to know who else. Yes, my trust was gone. I would get the answers I needed. I knew my marriage was a sham, and I would deal with that too, but I just needed answers. I didn't think I could face Sharon yet without tipping my hand, so at 3 p.m., I left the house so I wouldn't be there when she got home. I drove into town and stopped at the station to pick up a few of the things that I would need over the next few days. I stuck my head into my boss's office and asked him if he had a few minutes. I told him that I was having a few problems and wasn't feeling all that well, and that I would need a couple of days off early in the week to take care of it. He seemed okay with it, so I left and went to Frankie's for a place to hang until I had to go home. At 5 p.m., I called Sharon and told her that I was stopping for a few and wouldn't be home for dinner. She was a bit pissed at me and said, "Well, that is your loss because I am really horny tonight and you are going to get lucky. But if you stop, there is no way that is going to happen." Yeah, right, as if I wanted that made that way by Bastard Bob. She might be, but it was because of him and not me. She could just go F herself for all I cared. I said, "Honey, I already made plans to stop, so you just keep it hot for me and I will take care of you when I get home." I knew that would get her wound up in a hurry. She said, "Don't plan on it, Buster. If you think you can treat me like that, there will be nothing for you for a while." I thought to myself that that is exactly what I wanted to happen. I wasn't going to have it with her again until I found out exactly what had been going on, and maybe I would never have it with her again. I got home around 10:30 p.m. and I was pretty well sloshed, but not so sloshed that I didn't notice the bedroom door shut and locked. I grinned at that and hammered on the door to wake her up in case she was asleep, which I doubted. I yelled, "Okay, if this is how you want to play it, it will be a cold day in hell before I take care of your body, sister. Just suffer." With that, I headed for the spare bedroom, knowing she would be fuming mad now. That would buy me quite a few days of not having to explain to her why I didn't want to have it with her. The next morning when I got up, she was sitting at the kitchen table, having a cup of coffee when I walked in. I am sure the temperature of her coffee dropped a few degrees at that moment because it got extremely chilly in that kitchen, and her stare at me was ice cold. If I hadn't known she was an unfaithful wife, at that moment her look would have sent icy shivers down my spine. I smiled at her and said, Don't bother getting up to make me breakfast, honey. I will grab something on my way to the golf course. I walked out the kitchen door into the garage, threw my golf clubs in the trunk, and backed out of the garage and drove off. Moments later, my cell phone rang, and I saw that it was her, so I didn't answer it. A couple of minutes later, I heard it beep, and I knew she had left me a message, so I listened to it. Damn, she was mad. You bastard. How could you do that to me? Get you back here right now. Bastard? No, it was bastard Bob, not bastard me. If anyone was a bastard, it was him, and not me. I had no intention of going golfing, but that bought me a few hours to do what I needed to do. I drove straight to my former church. You don't think I would ever want to hear bastard Bob preach again, do you? It was still pretty early when I got there, so I knew there was little chance anyone would be around, and I was right. I let myself into the building, yes, because my wife worked there. We did have a key to the church, and went directly to the offices. My goal was to plant the remote micro cameras and mini microphones in her office and in Bob's office. It didn't take me very long to get that accomplished, and I hid the transmitter behind some old hymnals in the supply closet across the hall. I had the receiver in my trunk, and I wired it into my car's electrical system. I would now be able to monitor their conversations and activities anytime they were in their offices. I was pretty sure that they wouldn't do much there in the church, but I was also certain that I would gain a lot of information by watching them for a few days and listening to their conversations. When I was sure that everything would work properly, I snooped through her desk but found nothing. There was, however, a large asterisk on her calendar on Monday. That fit right in with what I had heard on Friday. I would be ready. Then I went into Bob's office and snooped around as well. I had very little luck finding anything incriminating, but at the last moment I had an inspirational thought. Of course, I was in a church. Why wouldn't I have been inspired? I looked through the filing cabinets looking for receipts for church expenditures. Sure enough, I located a file with several receipts for the La Quinta Inn in Roswell. A couple of them were from the end of, and a couple of them were from the spring. I knew that I was pressing my luck being here so long, so I quickly made copies of the receipts to take with me, and I put everything back in order and got out of there. I drove over to the golf course and parked in the general area I usually parked when I did play golf. Then I walked into the clubhouse and headed for the bar. I knew a few of the people in there and wanted to make sure that they would remember that I had been there. I found a table in the back and nursed a Sprite for a couple of hours. During that time, I looked over the bills very closely and discovered that the two from late 2005 were both Mondays, and the two from the spring of 2006 coincided exactly with dates when I went to New York to CBS headquarters for a conference. The thing that pissed me off the most was the fact that Bob had had the gall to charge those rooms to the church and labeled them conference room, rental for meetings. He was with my wife in a motel, and I had paid for the room. Yeah, we gave money to that church, but I wouldn't be giving any more. Their goose was cooked now. All I had to do was get a bit more evidence, and the gavel was going to fall. I knew that this had been going on for close to a year at a minimum, and probably longer. That too coincided with some of the hints that I had thought about earlier. My guess is that Bob has been with her since before she went to work for him. She had a good job at the Telfor Corporation as a receptionist, but she jumped at the chance to go to work for the church saying, "Honey, it will be so close to home, and I will be working for the church. What could be better than that? And the pay will be very close to what I was making at Telfor. How can I pass this up?" Yeah, closer to home, working for the church, almost the same pay. But obviously it was the extra fringe benefits she was most interested. As you can tell, I was getting angrier by the minute. I couldn't believe what a fool I had been. It made me angry, but it also made me sick to think that this sweet woman whom I had adored my whole marriage could do this to me, and not even bat an eye. Damn, I was going to make them pay. I figured it was about time to do a little checking, so I went out to my car and logged my iPod into the frequency of the receiver I had in the trunk. Sure enough, after I had scrolled through a few minutes of data, I saw bastard Bob walk into his office. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. I thought, heck, I should have put a bug on his phone, but I hadn't. Oh well, I will have to be content to hear a one-sided conversation for now. Yes, Sharon, I am at the church. I came here right after you called me. Why don't you tell me why you were so upset? Pause. Oh, has he ever done that before? Pause. I see. What do you suppose set him off? Pause. You don't think he is suspicious of anything, do you, Sharon? Pause. Laughingly, okay. Well, you can get even with him on Monday night. With that, he hung up and sat there contemplating something. I was just about to shut the transmission down when he muttered something that was barely audible, but I did manage to get it. I made sure I saved that soundbite so I could use it to my advantage later. After I shut down, I drove home. I figured it would be a bit cool there, so when I got home, I just set out to mow the lawn and do a few chores down in the basement. She didn't say much to me when I walked in, but it was obvious that there was still some heat there. When I ignored her at the dinner table, she just sat and stared at me. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore, and she tried to make conversation. "Dee, what is going on with you anyway? Why have you been acting this way?" "Sharon, you are the one who locked me out of our bedroom last night. Now you can put up with the consequences. I have very rarely gone out with the guys, and you blew up at me and threatened me the one time I did, so this is on you and not me." "F you," she said. "Just F you." I looked her square in the eye and said, "Is that any way for a fine Christian woman to talk? Your actions are hardly those of a woman who is supposed to have a strong faith." Oh my God. You should have seen the look she had on her face. There was guilt written on her face, so thick that anyone who saw her would have known she was a cheating ass. How she could have thought I wouldn't see that, I don't know. I will give her this, though she did recover nicely and finally excused herself from the table. I thought to myself, when I drop the gavel, she will not recover so nicely. A while later, she came into the family room where I was watching television. Don't tell anyone, but I was watching Fox, trying to get balanced news coverage. Her eyes looked a bit red, and I figured maybe she had done a bit of crying. The rest of the evening went on without incident, and when I was ready to go to bed, I simply walked down the hallway to the spare bedroom and went to bed. A few minutes later, she walked into the room and stood there. "What do you want?" I asked her. "Aren't you going to come to bed with me?" she questioned. "Nope. You made it clear that there was no thing in my immediate future, so I might as well sleep in here alone and get a good night's sleep." With that, she ran crying from the room. Frankly, I didn't care. Sunday morning, she woke me up at 8 a.m. She was dressed for church and asked me if I was going to get up and go to church with her. I told her, "No, I am not going today. You go and be a good church lady, and I will stay here and enjoy the day." There was that look again. I think she was starting to get the picture a bit, but again she recovered nicely. I did think, though, that I saw a little mistiness in her eyes as she turned and left the room. A bit later, I heard her leave the house and drive away. Later on, she wanted to talk, and I told her to just leave me alone. That ended the day, and we both retired to our respective rooms. Monday morning, I got up and headed out of the house without seeing her or talking to her. My cell rang. I answered it, and she tearfully said, "Dee, I am so sorry. I love you, and I hate it that this is happening. We will talk about all of this when I get home tonight," I said, and I disconnected the call. I called my boss and told him that I was still going to be off for the day, but that I would handle the Monday night football game as previously planned. He was happy that I was going to be available for that. He also asked me how things were going, and I said they were going as good as could be expected. My next stop was the La Quinta Inn in Roswell. There was a young fellow sitting behind the check-in desk when I walked into the lobby. I walked over and noticed that his name tag said he was Kevin. I asked him if he would do me a favor. He looked a bit skeptical but asked me what I needed. I told him the truth. I said, "Kevin, I am certain that my wife is F another man and she will be here with him tonight, and I want to catch them at it, so I need to be able to get into that room." He said, "I can't let you go into that room while they are there. I could get into a lot of trouble." I know you could, but I actually just want to put a microphone in there so I can record what they're saying. If you will let me do that, I will get you a couple of tickets to the next Falcons game." The little had the nerve to say, 4. I really didn't care since I did have 4 tickets from the station that I could give him. I agreed, and he gave me the key to the only Whirlpool suite in the motel. What he didn't know is that I was not only going to place a couple of mini microphones, but I was also going to plant a couple of micro cameras like I had at the church offices. I also put a bug in the phone so you could hear both sides of any conversation. When everything was set up, I tested it to make sure I was getting good transmission and good views of both the Whirlpool and the bed. I knew the images would be awesome if I had it set up right, and I would have all the evidence I needed. I double-checked to make sure that they were all relatively invisible and left the room. On my way out, I stopped at the desk to drop off the key to Kevin and gave him the tickets that I had promised him for next week's game. "Thanks, Kevin. I hope this all works out. Enjoy the game." Now I had a lot of time to burn, so I decided to take care of a few things that I would need to have ready. I went to our bank and got cashier's checks for half of the money in our checking account and half of the money in our savings account. I called and canceled our joint credit cards. I called my broker and arranged to meet him shortly after lunch. I told him I wanted some changes made to our investment accounts, and he said he could have everything ready by the time I got there. I called my attorney and told him I would need his services for a divorce and other matters to be determined. I made an appointment for later on that afternoon when he said he would have time to meet with me. Then I drove to the Planters National Bank in Marietta, Georgia, and opened new accounts in my name only and deposited the cashier's checks. I went to lunch in Marietta but didn't really feel much like eating. When I finished, I drove to my broker's office and we discussed the papers he had drawn up for me. They in essence split our investment portfolio into 2 equal parts without the necessity of selling any assets and creating unwanted tax consequences. All I would have to do is sign my name and get Sharon to sign hers. I took the papers with me. By then it was time to meet with my attorney and we went over the divorce papers he had prepared. I agreed to file a no-fault divorce and split everything equally if she would sign them immediately. If she wouldn't sign them immediately, I had him include a provision whereby I would file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. I was pretty sure she would sign them immediately. Everything I could think of had been taken care of, and all I had to do was get a bite to eat for dinner and then head to the station to oversee the Monday Night Football broadcast. When I left his office, I turned my cell phone back on and had a couple of messages from Sharon. She said, "D, I don't know what is going on with you, but you are scaring me. Why don't you come home before the game and talk to me about it? I love you so much, and it is tearing me apart that you are acting like this," she continued. "Please call me." I knew what she was going to be doing tonight, and she knew, and yet she could say the things she did to me. I thought, I must be the biggest fool in the universe to have loved and trusted this woman. I had made up my mind. The only thing that was going to save my marriage is if she did not show up at the motel tonight. If she didn't go to the motel, I would know that she cared enough about me to try to salvage our marriage. I would know that she sensed that our marriage was in trouble, and she couldn't let it go any farther. At 8 p.m., I put the system into the fully automated broadcast mode, and Monday Night Football began. I then set up the system to monitor my feed from the motel room. At precisely 8:15, Bob walks into the room and makes the call. "Hey baby, I am in the room. Get over here as quickly as you can." "Okay, honey, I will be there in a few minutes," she replied. He muttered a few more things after he hung up, and I was certain that I picked it up, but would have to listen later to see exactly what he had said. Well, so much for my marriage, I thought, but I really didn't expect that she would break it off anyway. It did hurt me, though, and hardened my resolve to make them pay. I pulled out my list of people I wanted to call and started dialing. It took me almost a half an hour to reach everyone on the list, but it was done. Sharon had arrived at the motel by then, so I went back to monitoring the video and the audio. "Oh God, Bobby, I get so excited thinking about you doing it with me. I am so happy we get these nights together," she said. "Come here, you little S," he said. "I love it when you talk dirty to me, Bobby. I want to be your." I wanted to be sick. Here was a pastor and a church secretary, my sweet, loving wife, sinking into the depths of depravity like I couldn't believe. In those moments, in the minutes to come, I would discover how sick they could be. What they were going to get tonight, both of them deserved. They deserved it big time. She was on her hands and knees on the bed. Her back was facing directly into the camera, and I do believe she was right. "Oh God, baby, you will never want to be with him again," he bragged. Sadly, she never said a word about that degradation he laid upon me. The dead love of my life. I knew there was never going to be an us again. I was in total agony, but my rage kept me focused. If the two of them could have seen me at that moment, I think they would have shrunk away in fear and trepidation. There wasn't much humanity left in me at that time. I would destroy them. OH was about all she could say. He didn't love her. All he did was make her feel good. I would never have been able to compete with that. All I could do was love her and make love to her. But never had I made her like he did. She was his S. She wanted to be his. And I was nothing in her eyes any longer. After 45 minutes, I had had enough. It was halftime in the game and time for the halftime show. I switched the system to live assist mode and patched in the recording of Bob and Sharon from the beginning. It only took a couple of minutes before the phone started ringing off the hook. I ignored all of the calls and took out my cell phone. I dialed Sharon's number, and I could hear it ringing on the monitors. She glanced at it and said, "It's D." Well, this time I am not going to answer his call and see how he likes it. Let's continue while he is hanging on the line. I hung up and dialed it again. "Well, I suppose I better take it," she said, and I could see her taking it out of her purse. "Hello, D," she answered. "What do you want now?" I could literally hear the venom dripping out of her mouth. I said, "Sharon, where are you? What are you doing?" "I went shopping since you didn't call me earlier, and I am going to stop for something to eat then go home soon." "So, you are shopping now?" I asked. "Yes, and I am going to spend a bunch of money too," she responded. "Well, that is just great. Thanks, Sharon, for being such a great wife. What man could ask for anything better than I have in you?" "Don't talk to me like that. I sure don't know what has gotten into you. Goodbye." There she was calling me a bastard again. "No, Sharon, the bastard is Bastard Bob right there in your motel room." As things wind down, and I figured I would love to interrupt that. I knew she wouldn't answer her cell phone again, so I dialed the motel number. "Kevin, this is D. Are you watching Monday Night Football?"
No?
"You should be. Could you ring the Whirlpool suite for me?" After 2 rings, he picked up. "Hi, Bob. Can I speak one more time with Sharon?" "D, what are you doing calling here?" she said as she came on the line. "Well, Sharon, you see it is like this. I know you are a cheating S, and I know where you are, and I know what you have been doing. I am going to file for divorce and throw your ass out on the street. I am sure some very bad things will also happen to Bob." "What are you talking about, D? I sure can't understand you lately. What has gotten into you?" "Sharon, the jig is up. I think you ought to turn on Monday Night Football and enjoy the halftime show. I will see you later. Goodbye." On the live monitor of the room, I could see her go to the television set and turn it on and tune it to MNF. "Oh my God, no!" she screamed when she saw the streaming video of her and Bob. There was a time delay from the live video, so she saw plenty of what the whole Atlanta area had been seeing. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," was all she could say as she hurriedly dressed and ran out of the room. Bob was in no less of a hurry to get out of there and was cursing the entire time. "I will kill that son of a b. I will kill him," he mumbled. Bob should learn not to mumble things. They would all come back to bite him. As soon as they were out of the room, I shut down the monitors and let the video stream to the end. Then I switched off the live assist mode and put the system back into the fully automated broadcast mode. I pulled the tape and left the broadcast booth. It would probably be the last time I would be in the building, so I took a few things from my desk that I would want. Now you are up to speed. I spent the rest of the night at Frankie's, and yes, my halftime show was the talk of the bar. After the game ended, I was headed home in a cab. When I got home, Sharon was sitting in the living room with all of the lights off. The phone was off the hook, and I could tell that she had been crying her eyes out. She cried a lot, but I didn't care. It was over as far as I was concerned. "How could you do that to me, D?" she wept. "After all the years we have been together, how could you?" "No, Sharon," I replied. "The correct question is, how could you do that to me? I am drunk and I am going to go to bed. We will talk tomorrow." She didn't move as I walked out of the room and down the hall to the spare bedroom. In the morning, when I got up with a pretty bad hangover, she was still on the sofa with dark circles around her eyes. It looked to me like she had not slept at all, but again, I really didn't care. She did this to herself. I had nothing to do with it. I walked over and put the phone back on the hook, and it almost immediately started to ring. For the next hour and a half, I answered calls from family members, including her mother and father, friends, church people, my boss, or should I say ex-boss, and both of my daughters. They were terribly upset about what they had seen, and nothing I said to them would calm them down. I knew it was cruel for them to have seen what they did, but they are adults and will get over it. And oh yes, there was a call from Mrs. Bastard Bob too. She wanted to know if I kept a tape of the whole event, and I assured her I had a tape in safekeeping and would give her a copy if she wanted it or needed it. It was plain that everyone I had called had watched the Monday Night Football halftime show. They were all letting me know it. Some were angry with me because it was XXX rated, of course, and some, like her mother and father, thought I was horrible for putting her on display like I had. But most were sympathetic to me and understood. It was a pretty trying ordeal, actually, but the price I had to pay for what I did. Sharon just sat there crying again during the entire time. Finally, I left the phone off the hook again and went to make myself some coffee. When I came back, I offered her some coffee and took out the divorce papers and the investment paperwork she needed to sign. Sharon, I am divorcing you. After what I found out and saw last night, you have been cheating on me for at least a year or more, and there is no way I will stay married to you. These are divorce papers, and if you read them in their entirety, you will see I am asking for a no-fault divorce and am agreeing to split our property evenly. In order for that to happen, you need to sign the divorce agreement now and the agreement to split our investments evenly now. There will be no negotiations and no altering of these papers. They are totally fair to you. I will give you until 5 p.m. tonight to see an attorney and verify what I am offering to you, and that it is a fair offer. At 5:01 p.m. that deal is off the table and I am filing for divorce on the grounds of adultery, and I will seek a property distribution based upon both what I brought into this marriage, which was in excess of what you brought in, and based upon our respective earnings. In short, I will go after everything I can get. Make no mistake, this is the best deal you can get, so take it. And in the end, it would be a little foolish of you to fight a divorce based upon adultery when all of Atlanta will know it is the truth. Everyone will know you are a lying, cheating ass. It is what you wanted to be. I heard you tell Bob that. So you have your wish and now everyone knows it. Take the deal, Sharon. D. I love you and I want to stay married to you. Can't we try to work this out? That may be true, Sharon, but it doesn't matter. Love has nothing to do with it. I will not stay married to you. Our marriage ended when you decided he was more important than me, and believe it or not, you did make that decision when you gave yourself to him, when you F him like a common W. Now, I would suggest you get yourself cleaned up and go see an attorney. Your time is short. Later that afternoon, she returned home with the papers. My attorney recommends that I sign these papers, D. He says you have made a very fair offer given the circumstances, and he thinks I should jump at the chance for this settlement. D. Can we talk? Can you listen to me and maybe see if you can forgive me and work together to make this marriage work? I told her that I would sit and listen to her because I really wanted to know why she did what she did. I also wanted to know if she had done that before in our marriage. We sat down at the kitchen table and she explains everything to me. There had been no others. It started a short while before she went to work for Bob. She said she didn't really know why because she was totally happy with me but couldn't deny that something had attracted her to Bob. It was probably his charismatic demeanor. She felt he loved her. I agreed with her that Bob was charismatic, but I burst her love bubble when I played back the 2 sound bites I had saved of him. Here is what Bob had muttered that first day. That stupid C had better not let her husband find out that she is with me. I don't care if she does have the best you-know-what, or that she is as easy to as a W. She will be gone. She is so dumb it was a piece of cake, but I think she needs to be history pretty damn soon. The second soundbite was from the room just before she arrived. I am going to be with this C tonight. She won't know it, but tomorrow I am going to fire her and dump her. If she raises a fuss, I will threaten to tell D. That will keep her in line. I can't take a chance husband finding out about us and ruining everything up for me. So Sharon, not only did you destroy our marriage, but you were mistaken about Bob's feelings for you. All you were to him was a toy. You were just AS. I saw how he treated you and how you liked it. I never made you feel like that, and I never could because to me you were a loving wife and not AS. No, Sharon, there is no way I could ever stay married to you for 2 reasons. First, you cheated on our marriage vows and I cannot live with that. And second, you would never be happy with me again anyway. I would never be able to satisfy you again. No, Sharon, no matter how much either of us loves the other, it wouldn't be enough to get past the baggage that you created in our marriage. She just sat there crying, knowing that what I said was the truth. In the end, she just signed both sets of papers. I told her that I would be moving out and that she could stay as long as she needed to find a place to live. I didn't think she would be able to afford the house, and I didn't want to live in the house, so our agreement said that it would be sold and the net gain split evenly just like everything else. There would just be too many memories in that house anyway. I took the papers and the bags I had packed the day before and left the house. I drove to my broker's office and dropped those papers off, and then to a hotel for the night. The next morning, I had an appointment with my attorney. We discussed the divorce papers, and he agreed to file them with the Superior Court of our county yet that day. We also sat and talked about the trouble I was in at the station and with the FCC. He explained to me that the FCC has authority to issue civil monetary penalties, revoke a license, or deny a renewal application. In addition, violators of the law, if convicted in a federal district court, are subject to criminal fines and/or imprisonment for not more than 2 years. Frankly, it was no surprise to me because I had been in the business for 22 years and I knew the rules. He said given the circumstances, he felt I would probably not see jail time, but there would be pretty hefty fines and my career as I knew it would be over. I would have to find a new line of work. Within a few days, all of the fallout had hit. I was served by the FCC and would be spending a number of days in court defending myself. I won't bore you with the details of the case, but it suffices to say that the fine amounted to about a year's salary for me. So much for my savings account. Worse than that, my broadcast license was revoked, and I would be unable to work in my profession for 2 years. The good news, however, is that TT had watched MNF2, and even though what I did was illegal and very vindictive, he had compassion on me and gave me a job with responsibilities that met the restrictions imposed on me by the FCC. Apparently, his ex-wife, Henry's daughter and Peter's sister, had raked him over the coals pretty good in their recent divorce. I guess I did have that one thing to like. HJ4. Bob confronted me one time at Frankie's. He was going to try to punch out my lights, but somehow I ended up standing on his chest with one foot, while holding one of his arms tightly. Now, Bob, I don't ever expect to hear from you again. Do I make myself clear? I said. He said, F you. I guess I needed to kick him one more time. I said, Bastard Bob, I have an audio tape of you threatening to kill me. I believe if I take that to the police, I will be within my rights to file a restraining order on you, and perhaps even file assault charges against you. I think with the evidence I have, you will do some prison time. Is that what you want? He shook his head no. As I kicked him one more time for good measure, I said, Well then, I guess this is the last time we will talk. Of course, he is no longer a pastor, even though he is still a bastard. He lost his job with the church, and the denomination withdrew his license and voided his ordination. Last I heard, he was working for a travel agency in the city. He was a charismatic bastard, I will give him that. So he is probably doing all right. He will need to be, because his wife sued him for divorce on the grounds of adultery, and she won a huge settlement from him. It seems my tape was pretty damning, even if not legally obtained. I am moving on with my life. I won't say things are perfect, but I am finding ways to be happy. I have dated a few women over the past several months, but have not gotten serious with any of them. I have not had it with any woman either. I believe in it within marriage, and I will not change my values, even if many would say I have every right to be active. When the right woman comes along, I will marry her, and then we will both enjoy as it was meant to be. I know it is just a matter of time, and I am willing to spend the time to find the right person for me. I do see Sharon from time to time. We both attended Stephanie's graduation from college, and we both attended the baptism of Melanie's first baby. I was civil to her, but I did make it perfectly clear that I wasn't there for her. I was not interested in being friends or buddies, or anything else for that matter. It was obvious to me that she was not happy. I could see that she was suffering emotionally from our split up and that she regretted what she had done. Again, that was not the issue. What was the issue is that she had betrayed me and our marriage. She had allowed herself to become the S of another man, and nothing would ever change that. If I were a different man, maybe I could have forgiven her for that, but my value system is pretty rigid, and there was not that much room for me to bend. She will just have to go through the rest of her life knowing that what she gave up for her with Bob was me, and the rest of her life with me. I was a mere man who loved her with all my heart, but she threw it away. Yes, she gave up me. Unfortunately for her, she also gave up any semblance of respectability, because everyone who saw her performance in the infamous Monday Night Football halftime show knows that she is AS. Rumor has it that she has lots of calls for dates. To her credit, she has not accepted any. It must be hell knowing that most men who call really only want to make her there. Not a very good way to go through life. But I didn't do it to her. She did it to herself.